Louise Bedford here, the money chick and the host of the Talking Trading podcast. This is how traders excel. Now, you may not know this about me, but way back before I even started trading, I had my own business. And when that business looked like it was about to fail, I got out of that business and invested that money in Pyramid Building Society. Yes, for those of you with a long memory, you will remember that Pyramid Building Society went down the gurgler. Around that time, I was also making crazy impulsive decisions, most of which didn't work out, but some of which did. But I was like a chaotic, crazy woman. I had lost all of my money. I was practically starving and relying on my husband-to-be's family to feed me. And if you have ever been in a situation with scarcity, you will know what a mind trick it pulls on your entire life. You not only have chaos following you, it's almost like you can't think clearly, so that every decision you make is plagued by that scarcity thinking. To help me unravel this mystery and to talk about how this impacts traders, I've invited Rik Schnabel onto the show, long-time friend of Talking Trading. Rik is the founder of Life Beyond Limits, a famous author, and you might have even done one of his NLP coaching and training programs. Now, if you don't know about NLP, it is neuro-linguistic programming, and it helps reframe your mind and gives you a different way of thinking about the world so that you start to attract good things into your life. So Rik is exactly the person we need to talk about scarcity. So let's welcome Rik to the show. Rik, you are one of my most favourite people in the whole world. Welcome to the show.
Oh, what a lovely, warm compliment. That's a wonderful way to start a show today. So thank you, Louise. That's awesome.
Now, you are a frequent visitor. I'm calling you a friend of the show. We explore all sorts of mindset tricks together, as well as some hacks that can make it just so much clearer about how to move forward. I wanted to talk about scarcity mindset today because I know with the environment that we're in, a lot of traders are starting to feel concerned about themselves, their family, their country even, and that's an ideal time to let it expand out our mind with the great brain untrainer, Rik. So what are the common signs that a trader is stuck in a scarcity mindset, even if they think they're being realistic?
I think the most important thing to understand is that we are conditioned. You know, we are conditioned in so many different ways, and sometimes we don't realize the meaning that we've placed on things. And I'm going to jump off trading, but this is a really good example. Let's go back to the 70s when we saw the movie Jaws. So what basically happened was, you know, I was very young. I remember going to the cinema. I remember even wagging school to go see it. And I wagged school with a friend to go to see Jaws, the movie, because I wanted to be one of the first to see it. And what happened was, prior to that, the ocean was a wonderful place. You went to swim and it was paradise and beautiful sand and crystal clear water. And it was a wonderful journey. But of course, Jaws happened, which was, you know, reality was the ocean is what it is. But when we then get conditioned, which was going to watch Jaws, and Spielberg did an amazing job of creating enormous fear, what basically happened is that conditioning changed the perception of the ocean. So we just happened to go the following day to PE, you know, physical education, and we all went to the beach for a swim. And I swear, I went up to my waist. I wouldn't go in any deeper because the perception changed, the ocean changed. It turned into a dangerous place. So that's really what scarcity thinking is. It's conditioning. You know, it's a little bit like, you know, once upon a time, someone stole your pocket money when you were 6 years old, and all of a sudden you've got this warped perception about what money is and also your relationship to it. a classic example, if I can give you a quick one, is that I remember working with a lady who had a scarcity mindset. And we got down to one particular event when she was in Greece, and she said she was only about 6 years old, and her brother was about 8, 2 years older than her. And her father said, "Here is your money while we're in Greece." And he gave the money to her brother. And then she put out her hand and he said, "No, by the way, this is scandalous what he said." He said, "Women cannot manage money." Yeah, I know. It's terrible. We're very non-PC in,
Damaging.
this culture. But the thing is that what happened is that was her scarcity mentality. She was good at actually making money, but she was never good at managing money. And that's because her perception had been conditioned by that one event. And so what you've got to do is you've got to get into the psychology to shift the perspective of that event in order for the scarcity program to go.
And even to become aware of it in the first place. I read a study that when we are under threat, our peripheral vision dissolves and all we can do is see the thing right in front of us. And for a trader, that is just big trouble, because what we're looking at is a lack of weight of evidence, a lack of data to make a decision. So it has a physiological effect as well. It's not just that, oh, we're feeling a bit nervous. It's that actually our body changes and we need to adjust to that as a trader also. I'd love to hear your thoughts about scarcity and why you think it has such a strong grip on traders.
Well, it has two components in it that are probably the biggest fear components for most people. It has time and it has money. And if you look at the myriad of your excuses that we will typically use as people to do something different, and now you've got to understand that we as people, we love the same. And did I say same? So, we just enjoy that. I know what to expect, and there it is. It's shown up. Fantastic. It's exactly like it was yesterday. I feel safe. So when we don't feel safe, for example, I see this a lot, in people deciding to do my program. People would think to themselves, this is a great opportunity. This is going to be the point that my life changes. In that moment. Change? What? Who said change? Do you mean things are going to be different? Oh my God, stop, brakes on. Because we've got to invest time and we've got to invest money. They're the two biggest excuses that people use. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. So this is very much, tantamount in creating this scarcity mentality in traders, because they're thinking, oh my God, if I don't take this trade right now, I'm going to miss out, and that's a FOMO, a whole nother array of problems. But it's also the money. Money at the end of the day is just a bunch of digits. You're a millionaire, multimillionaire, or not. It's just a bunch of digits. Very rarely do we see all our money in a pile and a stack on our kitchen table, or maybe our kitchen tables. But the thing is, they're just digits. But what we do is we put emotion, which comes very here, in our heart, worse, our gut brain. And what happens when we think of time and money, there's a thing called chromatin. Now, chromatin is like the myelin sheaths that are over our neurology. It does the same thing. It protects our DNA. So when we're about to do a trade and we start feeling any levels of fear, what happens is our chromatin literally squeezes our DNA. And when it squeezes our DNA, what happens is we can't think. We can't think, but I'm in front of a computer. I said I was going to do a trade. Oh my God, I've got to do a trade. Oh my God, there's one. Oh, should I take it? Should I not? Should I take it? Should I not? Oh, I could miss out. Take the trade, and it's this incredible amount of stress.
Yeah.
So if we think about it, the most important thing that traders need to do is calm the hell down.
Yeah.
calm themselves, get all that time and money, stress out of their bodies.
Because there is a healthy caution that traders need to have. You don't want somebody being so risk oriented that they're just taking decisions without considering the consequences. But on the other end, there's also that fear-based decision-making potential. It is interesting as well, Rik. I was saying in the introduction how I had a business and I lost the business and I put the remainder of the money into Pyramid Building Society. And I went through quite a few years of absolute poverty. Then, oh my goodness, I was scraping together cents to be able to eat. And it is interesting how that has an impact on you in the future. Like one of the things I notice, if you look in my pantry right now, I've got about 15 boxes of cereal in there because cereal makes me feel rich and abundant and wealthy. And I can just look at that cereal and realize I don't just have the one box the way I used to when I was very poverty stricken.
Yeah.
I've got an abundance of choices. So there is a fine line on that continuum. And I'd really like to hear your thoughts about how does a trader know which one is running the show, healthy caution or fear?
Okay. There's a very simple way to do this, but I'll leave this to the end. I can totally relate to what you're talking about. When the recession that we had to have happened, I had an emerging business that was growing enormously. Now, the problem with growth in a recession is that you're investing behind the train and waiting 30, 60, 90 days for the train to catch up with the money. And so as a result, I worked it out on a slide rule. One particular day, I worked out that I was so broke that I was in my very early 30s. I was so broke that I wasn't going to get rid of my debt based on my highest salary until I was over 70. That
Ooh.
freaked me out. And like you, I don't know how I did it, but somehow I survived. I remember, doing incredible things with rice
Oh,
and
yeah.
little
Rice
money,
and noodles and oats were my friend. Yes.
fillers, lots of
Yes.
fillers, cheap fillers. And so I survived through that particular time. But I found that really, at the end of the day, the result that happened during that recession had a hell of a lot to do with my financial status. Like I couldn't even get beyond the $100,000 ceiling. That was a glass ceiling for me. And even when I was going for jobs, I wouldn't put my hand up for a role that would pay me more than 100,000 because I didn't think I was worth it.
Mm.
And so when I made a major shift in my financial world, it really was a result of a hell of a lot of coaching. And my coach kept saying, here we go, we're going back to that same old time again, the recession that we had to have. And I would say to my coach, well, it makes sense because, boy, I'm so triggered. A little bit like you looking at your cupboards with all those cereal boxes, same deal. I used to look at my bank account. Whenever my bank account got to a real critical moment, I would start breathing heavy and heart pounding and all this. Now, I had to do a lot of coaching to get those emotional triggers out of me because the world's going to go up and down.
Yeah.
It's going to go in cycles. We're going to have another recession. We'll probably have another depression. We'll have another boom. We'll have another bust, and so it goes. But it's not about the markets. It's not about what's going on. It's about how you can contain yourself through those markets. So a very simple thing to do, and it's very easy. You grab one hand and you put it on your stomach. So your stomach will hopefully be going in and out. Then if you grab your other hand and you put it on your shoulder and notice where you're breathing from, and where you're breathing from will be whichever hand is going up and down. So if your bottom hand on your gut is going up and down versus the one on your shoulder, when you're going up and down here, it means you are in fight or flight. So if you're breathing heavy or breathing at the chest level, it means that you're in a reactive mode. But if you're breathing at your gut level, it means you're pretty calm. So, for example, when we're making really big decisions, this is something I'll often do. I'll put one hand there, and then I'll work out where am I breathing from. If I'm
I
if I'm
like that.
breathing from here, I do not make that decision.
Ah,
It's not
okay.
time.
So you need to be breathing into your gut to be able to
Yeah,
make a clear decision.
yeah,
That's actually exceptional because traders can do that quite easily as a routine before they begin trading.
yeah,
That's a good one.
yeah. And
Yeah.
we can tell by our breathing. Like if you breathe out more than you breathe in, like I'll demonstrate it dramatically.
Mm,
That's parasympathetic. That's the parasympathetic nervous system that says, I quit. This is too hard. This is, stop. I can't cope with this. But if we are breathing in more than breathing out, then we are in sympathetic. And sympathetic is, I'm up,
right.
ready to
Yeah.
fight. So either one of those is not good.
Yeah.
So what we want to be able to do is balance our breathing. Quite often when I'm coaching someone who is, pretty tensed up and pretty stuck, I'll say, let's start by breathing. So we're only going to invest 1 minute in this, and we're going to breathe in for 6 seconds and go deep as possible, and breathe out for 6 seconds, and do that for about a minute. So it's about 10 repetitions. And when we do those 10 repetitions, it balances our autonomic nervous system, so we get out of fight or flight. Something that I'm often, when I'm coaching traders, is I ask them, what ritual do you have before you're actually going to trade? Because it's really critical as to what sort of rituals they have. It's kind of, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to have a look at the markets, and I'm going to quickly, I've only got 15 minutes, so I've got to do a trade. There's only 15 minutes and I've only got this money. Oh my God. That's nonsense. It's a ridiculous
The
way to
other
trade.
thing traders do while they're putting on the trade is they hold their breath. I've called it trading apnea.
Yeah,
So, they're about to hit the buy button and they're there with no oxygen
yeah.
in their brain. It is just surprising to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, I've seen people widen their eyes. So there's a
Mm,
lot of white around their pupils. And the more white you can see around a person's pupil, the more in flight they probably are, or in fight they probably are. So it's very much about calming yourself and getting yourself into, the absolute best state that you possibly can get into.
and that's from a physiological point of view, but also what about language? Like there's a few parts to this, and I've got a friend. Okay, so I'm asking you for some advice, Rick. This friend is always seeing the darkness, the black, the scarcity. It's never going to be good enough. It's never going to be a beautiful enough day. And if it is a good day, then just tomorrow it's going to be winter and we're all going to be in a famine. So that type of mindset, it seems to come out of their mouth, and it is extremely difficult to counter. I mean, I'm quite an optimistic person, but even I have a trouble counteracting that negativity. So I think they're related. I think negativity and scarcity are related. And I do think there needs to be a shift in our language before we experience abundance. But I'd love your thoughts on this.
Yeah, look, quite often a few indicators are, of course, there's sentences that we say, what if this is my last trade? What if I lose? What if I don't put on enough? What if I put on too little? All of the doubt programs. But some key things to listen to your own languaging is when you start hearing yourself say, I should, I must, I have to. And then if then statements, if I don't do this, this will be the negative outcome. If I must do this, or this negative outcome will happen. So we were actually talking just before we got on today, and I think it'd be valuable for everyone to hear what we were talking about. And that was, you can take the quantum perspective on this, the quantum mechanics perspective, or you can take the psychological perspective, and I'll take both. So the thing is that what happens is when we're in an abundance mindset, and by the way, there's a big myth about abundance. A lot of people think abundance is, gay abandon, just go for it. Don't consider it. It'll all be good. It'll all be great. No, abundance mindset is, the risks. And what you're doing is, and what you guys teach so beautifully well to many of the people that I coach is they have systems. So it's really sticking with their systems, not second guessing it, that all of a sudden when you get a stop trade, they put it back on, and stuff like that. So it is definitely about managing those systems. But the most important thing to understand is that when we look at it from a mindset perspective, if you have a belief and your belief is, oh my God, I've never been good at this. Oh my God, 9 out of every 10 trades goes south. Oh my God, I'm getting really stressed because, this is my last chance. If you start hearing that particular language, underneath it, what there is there's a belief system. And so what we have to get into is we have to get into the belief system that actually exists there. And so, for example, a belief system could be, I'm unlucky. Now let me take, and so that's the psychological level, but let me now take the quantum level on this. And this is where things can get very magical. I remember I had to go to Florida for a particular meeting. And before I went, I was running a master's class, NLP master practitioner class. And in that class, I asked everyone to think about a belief that sidesteps them or hurts them or hits them or reduces their life in some particular way. And I asked them all to think about a belief, and then I taught them how to change a belief. And one particular guy, I was going around the room and saying, what's your belief you're going to change? What's your belief? And one guy said, I'm going to change the belief from I'm unlucky to change it to I'm lucky. Now, I discovered, by the way, this guy said to me, I said, what's your big goal? He said, I want to be a multimillionaire. This guy is now worth 4.8 million. He's got assets everywhere. He's doing really, really well now, and he's in a great space. And you could actually say that maybe it was that belief that was the cornerstone of those opportunities opening up. Because here I am on a plane heading over to Florida, and I'm sitting in the plane, and you've got a lot of time from a flight to America. So I thought, I've never thought of that belief. I'm lucky, unlucky, etc. I'm going to do a belief change on myself. So in the plane, I'm doing some inner work on myself, and I'm shifting my belief from I'm unlucky, because I used to believe that, to I'm lucky. Now, the fascinating thing that happened as a result, when I got to Florida, the office had organized a car for me. And so I go in and organize a car, and the lady behind the counter says, it's your lucky day. I have just upgraded you. It's a beautiful day. I've given you a Volvo convertible. And I went, fantastic. So I drive off, go to this meeting, and then I've got some days on my own. So I decide to go to Universal Studios. I go to Universal Studios, and as I go to the ticket booth, there's a guy there, takes my money, and then he says, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Australia. He said, oh, I thought you were from England or New Zealand or somewhere like that. And anyway, he said, have you heard of the Fast Pass? And I said, no, I haven't. What's a Fast Pass? And he said, a Fast Pass means that you get in another queue and it's faster. He said, let me give you one. And he gave me a fast pass. So at Universal events, I'm going, I'm seeing these massive queues, and I'm going, blah, 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 and I'm the very first person in the next gate in the fast pass. And so, but the funniest thing happened when I flew to LA, and I left. It was starting to get a bit cool, and I only had a t-shirt on. So I thought I better get something to wear. So I went in the shop, and as I'm in this shop, I see this thing blinking. And it caught my eye, and I had to go over and check out what this blinking thing was. And what it was a key ring with the solar panel on the back, causing the key ring to flash with the words, "I'm lucky," with 4-leaf clover on it. And I thought, oh my God, I got to buy this. And so the thing is, it's your belief system. It's also, from a very quantum perspective, is when we shift a belief or when we shift a feeling in our body, all sorts of opportunities can open up for you. And look, I've proven this again and again and again and again in my life. And there was a period of my life where, not so long ago, back in 2023, I started doing some research about what was going on in the world. And I must say, I went down some very dark rabbit holes. And I felt myself getting very, very negative. And what happened was we, Life Beyond Limits, had the worst start to any calendar year in the history of Life Beyond Limits. Like, money wasn't coming in. It's like someone hit an off button and there wasn't money coming in. We were sending out emails. We were doing all our normal stuff to generate income, and nothing was working. I went to my coach and I said, something's really wrong. And he gave me the biggest slap in the face, not literally, metaphorically. And he said, there's a book that you should read. And I said, what's that book? He said, A Richer Way to Think. And I went, you bugger. Of course, it was my book. And he said, you should read that book again.
It's a good book.
Thank you. And so I read the book and I went, oh my God, yeah, I've forgotten this. Oh my God, I've forgotten that. And of course, he did some coaching with me as well. But the following month, I'd concluded all the coaching that I was doing with him, and I read my book again and made some edits. But the thing was, I got into the next month, and we had the best month in the history of our company. Now, I know there's a lot of very logical people that go, oh, I don't know about this stuff. Well, I'm sorry. It works. It does. If you don't believe it works, well, sorry, you're the only person that's going to be affected by that. But the thing is, it does work. So our thinking, our feeling determines, what we bring into the world. It really, really does.
Yeah, and there are studies to back this. So there's a big study that was based on the reticular activating system of the brain with selective perception.
Yes.
Now, selective perception, you might know if you're about to buy, say, a red Mazda 6. You will see those red Mazda 6s everywhere.
Yeah.
They will be everywhere. And it's not that they didn't exist before. They existed before. It's just that you weren't honed to look for that on the roads. So one of the studies that shows this exact phenomenon is they got a group of people who said that they self-identified as lucky and another group that self-identified as unlucky. And they gave them a task, and the task was to count up the number of photos in a newspaper. So they had to turn over the pages of the newspaper and keep on counting. Now, the people who were lucky finished the task on average in 43 seconds, whereas the unlucky group took 6 minutes. Now, why was that? It was because on the second photo, in the caption underneath, it says, you can stop counting now. And it gave them the number of photos in the newspaper. So the lucky people actually were honed to enhance their own luck, to look for the goal, and to increase their own vision about what could be possible around that photo. Not just to hone in on that one photo, to see the caption underneath. So I do think that's showing that there is scientific backing for what you are saying. If you identify as, I'm an exceptional trader, that means that opportunities will jump out at you, that you will follow your stops, that you will follow your trading plan, that you'll do everything to regard that one trade as one piece of data amongst thousands. So you won't be too overtaken with emotion if that doesn't go well. You'll live to trade another day. And I think that's sometimes just as important when we're looking at it as a scarcity mindset than anything, because you are honing your mind to look for opportunities and to take advantage of them.
It's so appropriate. In fact, there may be someone who you have trained, and she may even be listening to this right now. But I remember she said, "I'm going to go out and I'm going to trade commodities." And I said, "Awesome. Can I give you a project?" And she said, "Sure." And, a delightful lady, she took on this project, and I said, "I want you to write the book on commodities." And she said, "What? The book?" She said, "Did you not hear what I said? I want to, I want to, I'm not currently, but I want to." And so I said, "Yeah, but if you can write the book on it, then it's going to open up a lot of questions, and you're going to have to do deep dive research and, even perhaps get some mentoring in this space and get really good at this." And it was remarkable how her level of awareness, self-awareness, and her level of other awareness, the market, exacerbated. She could see more opportunities because she was going deeper than most people would.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. What other techniques can you give our traders?
Well, I think one of the most important things to do as a first step is to become hyper conscious. Like these days, I know we're anything but hyper conscious. In fact, we're going the other way. Oh my God, that was a good movie. Oh my God, did you see what she posted? And we can get so distracted. But I think if we can be very present, and this is a practice, getting yourself to a point where you can be incredibly present. And let me give you an example of this. I think it's an honor to be invited here. B, I think it's also really important that I know my subject well and I can share the sort of information that actually can help people in the trading space. So I take it very seriously. So sometimes when you take things very seriously, just like trading, what can sometimes happen is you can overinflame your desire or need to get it perfect. And I don't know about you, but the world is not perfect. Maybe the planet is, but we are not. We take practice and we take perfection. We're constantly practicing, constantly learning. So I think the most important thing to do is respect that you are an evolving being. That you're going to look at yourself a year from now and you're going to look at some of the trades you did and you're going to look at some of the decisions you made, and you're probably going to be quite judgy of them. However, the reason you're being judgy of them is because your brain has moved to another level and you can see things that you couldn't see before. And so as a result of that, I think the first thing to be very respectful of self and your own evolution. The second thing is become aware of your world, not only your outside world, because this is what we're doing when we're trading. There's a lot of looking at, data all over the place. And I've seen everything from one screen to 12 screens, people with so much data in front of them. So a lot of shiny things, and they're all moving. And so the thing that we've got to be able to be is get ourselves into a very centered space before we trade. And work out what that is, whatever it might be. Some people meditate, they'll just close their eyes and just focus on their breathing and just let thoughts just go. And, that's kind of like a transcendental style of meditation. And, other people will, basically breathe. A lot of my students will do the 6-second breathing. They'll 6-second breathe for a minute and just get themselves into a really good space. And so they balance out their parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, so they're calm. They're really, really calm. And, another thing that I think is really important is if something's not meeting your criteria, if something's not meeting your rules, pause. Don't feel to jump in and have to make that trade because you sat down and decided today is a day where I'm going to make a trade. If the market doesn't meet your values, don't meet the market.
Yeah.
I think you've said numerous times, there'll always be another opportunity. There'll
Yeah.
always be another opportunity. And there always will. It's kind of like going out on a date saying, I'm going to marry Mr. or Miss Right, today. And, and you find the first girl or guy and you go, he's the one, she's the one, you'll do. And then, 20 years down the track, you discover you're in a very messy divorce because you chose wrong in the first place.
Yes. And one of the other techniques that I use, and I don't even think we've spoken about this before, Rik, I have mentioned it on the podcast once or twice, is I have a very fertile and active inner lunatic. Now, she looks like one of those flailing, inflatable clowns that they have in front of the car yard when they blow air up at center and it moves around in the air.
I know the ones.
And she sounds like the guy from the Alien movie, "Game over, man, game over." Okay, so that's my inner lunatic. Now, what I've found really does calm her down is if I actually put my hand on my chest and I take a deep breath and I say, "It's okay, love," as if I'm comforting myself. So I'm detached enough to kind of comfort myself from the outside. And I find I do this actually out loud. So it does help me develop more of a center, and it helps me understand my own identity is not that of the inner lunatic, because I think a lot of traders are plagued by questions of identity. So often we're told as a child, what are you going to be when you grow up? What do you do? I hate that question at a party. It's so rude and so dismissive of the entire person's totality when it comes down to just their occupation. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about how does a trader's self-worth get tangled in with their feelings about identity, and what can they do to break out of that identity trap?
Really, really good question, because if we think about it, identity is like the holder of everything. Identity holds your beliefs inside, it holds your values inside, it holds what we call meta programs inside, it holds your patterns, it holds your entire psychology within it. And you associate every time you look at the mirror, you go, hey, there's the guy with that identity. There's the girl with that identity, and so you keep showing up as that identity. And we do this so often in clothing choices. We do this in, choices of our glasses, of our cars, of our homes, all of these sorts of things. But this is why quite often when I'm coaching traders, I find that quite often we're going back to when they were 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, to get rid of a program that's not serving them in their trading. So the thing that we have to understand is, how did that identity form? And this is why we often go back so far to destabilize it, so that we change the conditioning and therefore change the perception. It's really about this idea of good and bad, just black, white, good, bad. So a lot of traders, what they do is when they do good trades, they say, I am good, or my skills are good. But of course, conversely, when they do bad trades, they've got to go the opposite, because there's no other definition, because they said that they were good when they do good trades. So therefore, when they do bad trades, they're bad. So this is the self-flagellation that really happens when people start talking to themselves with negative self-talk. And they go, well, you've always done this. You are terrible at this. You shouldn't have started this in the first place. How dumb are you? And then we start going into identity pieces. I mentioned one, dumb. I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good enough. And these are two common conversations that happen in very credible people. But how do they look in the street? This is how they look in the street. How do they look with feeling good? It's like this. How do they look when they're feeling bad? It's like this. It's exactly the same. So the thing that's actually going on, we can't see what's going on in people's minds a lot of the time unless, shoulders are slouched or, they're breathing fast or, very, very high. So the thing that's actually happening is all of those behaviors, all of your history is determining who you are. And then that falls into, a little bit like, the zany one that you were talking about, the crazy one. We turn it into an archetype or we turn it into a metaphor. And so we give ourselves that archetype. To give you actually a little bit of another example on this, when I teach people to get up on a stage and talk to an audience, that's a big deal for a lot of people because it's very easy to talk one-on-one, a little bit harder to talk one-on-one with a stranger, a lot harder to talk one-on-many strangers. So psychologically, a lot of people start, heart rate increasing, breathing rate increasing, blood. Now, when the heart rate goes up and when the blood starts moving, where is it moving from? I'll tell you where it's moving from. You usually see color change. When you see people go white, pale,
Yeah.
it's because all the blood, which is underneath your skin, is going down into your body to go out to, your hands, your legs, because you're going to run for it.
Yeah.
You're going to shuttle. So the thing is that what happens when we go into that archetype, we go pale, we lose our brain capacity because there's not enough blood and oxygen up there. And so as a result, we do very dumb things. So when I'm training people to build confidence levels in getting up onto a stage, something that I'll often teach them to do is choose an archetype. And I spent numerous years acting, and not because I wanted to be a movie star or a TV star or anything like that. I was always really curious as how did actors go from Fred Smith, normal accountant behind the curtain, and then come out as Jack the Ripper, in a play. And I was fascinated with how actors go through that transformation. So hence I went into acting to try to find out more because I felt it would be really helpful with my coaching and training. So what I discovered is that what actors do is they take on the entire persona of a character that they're going to play, and they'll walk like him or her, they'll talk like him and her, they will basically adjust everything. They'll even drink like them, eat like them, sit like them, wear the clothes that they might wear, and swagger or strut or work out the full-bodied personality. So in our speaker training, we do exactly the same thing. We go, okay, who are you going to be up there on the stage? Who's going to be the most helpful archetype for you? And quite often people will choose things like the wise sage. So for example, the wise sage speaks slower, more thoughtfully. The wise sage is very still in their body. The wise sage will move their hands but little, whereas the court jester will, move their hands all over the place and do crazy things and talk really, really fast and don't put a lot of air in their lungs because they're going to talk and 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 talk, and they're not going to stop. So it's a completely different archetype. So the big question that traders could be asking is, who am I when I trade? And does who am I when I trade, does that actually serve? Do they need to imagine themselves as somebody else when they trade?
And to the person listening to this show, you need more of Rik Schnabel in your life. Rik, how can people stay in touch with you, and what should everybody's next step be?
I think something, if they want a little bit more of what I do, I think a really good book that I think could be a good start is A Richer Way to Think, because that very much head on focuses on the mindset of a trader. And if you can read that book, and I don't say read the book, I mean really just one chapter at a time, consume it, change how you think and be in your day-to-day after reading that chapter before you read the next, and read it slowly, because it's a real mindset shift. So I think that might be a really good start. A Richer Way to Think can be very, very helpful. And as I say, don't consume the book, be the book. Really, really take it on board.
Oh, Rik Schnabel from Life Beyond Limits, you are a beautiful gem of a man. And for the person listening who really needed to hear this, I'm so glad that you're along for this journey with Rik and I. So until next week, happy trading.